Dungeons and Dragons has really changed since the beginning of the game, and I want to go over how it has and what we've lost today on Greyhawk Grognard. So, back in the day, Dungeons and Dragons and most other fantasy role-playing games were games of exploration, and they aren't anymore. And I wanted to kind of explore this for a little bit. Before I go on, just a reminder that this is a collaboration with Joe the Lawyer, Eric Tenkar, and our fourth wheel for the month, Don Samora. If you're watching my video on their channels, please give me a like and hopefully subscribe. And if you're watching and please go ahead and watch their videos on my channel and like and subscribe theirs. So the idea that Dungeons and Dragons is a game of exploration is something that goes back to its earliest days. And let me just read you something. Story time with the Grognard here. From the original Player's Handbook from first edition D&D. This is, I believe, 1978. 1978. And this is right in the beginning, right in the introduction, where it's discussing what the game is about. The game is ideally for 3 or more adult players. One player must serve as the dungeon master, the shaper of the fantasy milieu, the world in which all the action takes place. The other participants become adventurers by creating characters to explore the fantastic world and face all of its challenges, monsters, magic, and unnamed menaces. As is typical of most of us in real life, each character begins at the bottom of his or her chosen class or profession. By successfully meeting the challenges posed, they gain experience and move upwards in power, just as actual playing experience really increases playing skill. Imagination, intelligence, problem-solving ability, and memory are all continually exercised by participants in the game. And that's really the key of it. It's a game of exploration. The Dungeon Master creates the world, the players explore the world. This is not to say that there's no story involved, because the story emerges from that exploration. The story becomes the history of each of the player characters. Character A, his biography is the story that emerges from play, from the exploration of the world. And it's not just the exploration of the wilderness and the cities and the forests and everything, but it's also the exploration of the dungeons. And this is why the concept of having that one big, huge, crumbling dungeon is central to the idea of the earliest days of the game. It's because that is where the exploration happened. It was a place for you to go and explore. It was a mythic underworld that you could go in, where the things happened in that mythic underworld that wouldn't normally happen outside in a safe town or in a tavern or whatever. It was only later that the idea that we can have adventures in above ground too. We can have adventures in the city. We can have adventures. This happened in Gary's campaign. Obviously, we had adventures took place outside of the dungeon, and there were other dungeons that you could go to and so forth. But the central idea is you are exploring. You are finding out what's out there, and that becomes the basis for the game, which becomes the basis for the story that emerges. And that idea of the story as emergent from exploration is core to the concept of the game back in the 70s and the 80s. But that changed, and you can put a pin in it to really delineate when that change started, and that was Dragonlance. And I'm not hating on Dragonlance. I loved Dragonlance back in the day. I still love the books. The modules were kind of odd because they were telling a story, and the characters were expected more or less to follow that story. And in doing so, it became rather railroady, because if a character dies in one adventure and in DL1, and that character is needed in DL2, well, that character just comes back to life, and the story moves on. The story was more important than the events that took place during the game, and that turned Dungeons and Dragons on its head. Now, TSR didn't care, because they were making more money selling novels than they were selling games at that point. So they were, oh sure, Dragonlance, let's get in it, and they started cranking out all kinds of novels, and they loved it. and they were dominating the New York Times bestseller list for fiction and stuff. They were peachy keen with it, but deep down, I don't think they really understood just how fundamentally they were changing the nature of the game by doing so. Until we come to the most current iteration of the game, and now this is what we have. Um, There's no winning and losing in D&D, at least not in the way those terms are usually understood. Together, you and friends create an exciting story of adventurers who confront perils. Sometimes an adventurer might come to a tragic end. Even so, the other adventurers can search for powerful magic to revive their fallen comrade, or the character's player might create a new character to carry on. No matter what happens, if everyone had a good time and creates a memorable story, you all win. Nowadays, the story is the point of the game. Now, you can have a story that comes out of, you can have a story that's based on exploration to some point, but that the exploration aspect is secondary to the story. And I think that that inversion has really tilted things on its head because now it's not about player skills, it's about character skills. So rather than the player explaining how he's going to try to disarm a trap or search for a secret door, I'm going to I'm going to look for any little wires or anything. I'm going to feel along the cracks of the mortar to see if anything moves under my fingers. Things that we used to do back in the day to describe what our characters were doing. Sure, there'd still be a die roll, but at least you had that kind of visceral, tactile explanation for what you're doing. And most DMs, at least when I was playing, if you gave really good explanations, you could even supersede the die roll because well, yes, you found it. You said what you said what it needed to do. You turned the knob on the pedestal and opened up the secret compartment. You didn't need to roll because the character just said what he needed to do. Compare that to nowadays, where it's just a die roll. I'm going to make a perception check. I'm going to make a persuasion check. What we used to have to do as part of the exploration of the environment was actually say what our characters were going to do, rather than just do it by a die roll. You could. You would actually say what you were going to say to the orc sergeant who is on patrol in the dungeon. You're going to try to do some fast talking and try to convince him that you're actually friends or something. And you would actually say those words, what your character was saying. Now it's just, I make a persuasion check. And I think that we have lost something very, very valuable, very hands-on, very tactile is the word I use, to explore the world around us rather than just rolling a die and seeing what the die roll says. You actually interact with the environment through the DM, and the DM is pressed then into better DMing skills because he's got to be able to do exactly the same thing, but he's doing it for every NPC in the whole game. So he has to, this is where the funny voices come in. This is where he's got to keep track of which which NPC is going to know which things and so forth. And if it's not spelled out in your dungeon, then you have to improvise and handle it that way. And improvisation is such a great skill that every DM should have, but you don't have to improvise nearly as much if you're just reacting to die rolls, and if the players aren't exploring, but they are interested in telling the story that you have laid out, or you and the players have laid out together. Which from an exploration standpoint is even worse because you know what's coming. That's the opposite of exploration. You explore in order to discover what is about to happen. In a story-based game, it's not at all unusual for the players to know at least the broadest outlines of the story. This is going to be, we're going to spend 6 months playing this, and ultimately you and your friends are going to fight Tiamat or whatever um, and that is the inverse of what the game was like in the 70s and 80s. And I struggle to explain that sometimes to people that because the games that I prefer, Adventures Dark and Deep or First Edition or Swords and Wizardry or Gamma World or things like that, they are games of exploration. They are games where you have to use your talents as an improvisational actor basically to play the game. And we've lost that aspect of it. At least, when when I play 5th edition at conventions or whatever, it's that aspect is very much wanting, and I think I think we've lost something. I think we've lost something, and the game is not better for it. So anyway, we will be talking about this. At some point during our live stream. But do let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this subject. What if anything has D&D lost when it moved away from being a game of discovery and exploration and into a game of storytelling? I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Please sound off in the comments. Hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.